Some stories find us when we need them most, in a world that moves too fast, where kindness often feels like a relic of another time. There's comfort in remembering that decency still exists, that it always has. Even in the hardest places. This is a story about the kind of goodness that doesn't announce itself, doesn't seek applause. The kind that shows up late, dust-covered, and silent, and changes everything with a handful of coins and 2 words, "I'll take them." It's set in a time when the West was still wild, when a woman could lose everything and find herself standing on an auction block with nowhere left to fall. But it's also about what happens after, about how broken people build something new from scratch, one quiet gesture at a time. If you've ever wondered whether one person's kindness can truly matter, well, this story has an answer for you. Ellen Cartwright counted bricks. 43 across the courthouse wall, mortar crumbling between them like old teeth. She kept her eyes there, on the red clay and white dust, because if she looked at the faces, she'd break. Samuel's fist clutched her collar, his 3-month weight solid against her chest, and that was the only thing keeping her upright. That and the counting. 43 bricks. 1 for each day since Thomas died. The auctioneer's voice droned somewhere to her left. She didn't listen to the words anymore, just the rhythm. The way his tongue clicked against his teeth between sentences. Professional. Like he was selling a plow horse. The county had no legal right to auction a woman and her child. Slavery had been dead 20 years. But in this corner of Wyoming territory, the sheriff made his own rules. And the courthouse steps had seen stranger things than debt collection. Nobody argued. Nobody ever did. Sound of body, age 22, 1 infant male. The September sun beat down on the platform. No shade. They'd built it in the center of the courthouse square for everyone to see. Ellen felt the wood grain rough under her boots. Thomas's boots, stuffed with newspaper to fit her feet. The leather cracked at the toes. She could see the cracks if she looked down. But she didn't look down. She looked at bricks. Her milk let down. The sensation came sudden, the way it always did when Samuel fussed or when too much time passed. Warm and then wet, soaking through her bodice. She pressed her arms tighter against him, felt the fabric stick to her skin. Black crepe, morning dress. The dye was already fading to gray at the seams. And now it would smell like milk on top of lye soap and baby spit up. A man in the crowd shifted his weight. She heard the creak of his belt, saw his hand move to his tobacco tin. Didn't look at his face, just hands. That's all she'd been looking at for the past 20 minutes, hands that would own her if they had $47. The rancher had tobacco-stained fingers, nails cracked from work. The banker's knuckles were ink-smudged, soft. Someone else had rope burns across his palms. She cataloged them the way she used to catalog Thomas's tells at the poker table. Before she learned that knowing his tells didn't matter when the cards were already dealt. Debts total $47. Samuel whimpered against her neck, his breath hot and damp. She bounced once. Automatic. And his fist tightened on her collar. The seam there was already weak. She'd mended it twice. If he pulled hard enough, it would tear, and she'd be standing here with her dress gaping, and these men would see she counted bricks again. Started over. 1, 2, 3. The auctioneer licked his thumb, turned a page in his ledger. The ink blot on the corner looked like Wyoming if you squinted. Ellen had never been to Wyoming? Probably never would. Shall we start the bidding at $15? The banker cleared his throat. 22? Ellen's stomach dropped. Someone else, 25. She tasted copper. Had bitten the inside of her cheek without meaning to. The pain was sharp and clean and better than listening to her own value rise $5 at a time. Samuel grabbed at her hair. She'd pinned it this morning, but it was coming loose. Dark strands falling across her face. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered except staying on her feet until this was over. Mrs. Henley stood at the edge of the crowd. Ellen saw her from the corner of her eye. The woman who'd promised to help after Thomas died, who'd brought one pot of soup and then stopped coming. She was looking away now. Everyone was looking away, or looking too close. 35. The voice came from the man with rope-burned hands. Ellen's eyes moved to him before she could stop them. He was studying her waist, her teeth, the way a man studies a horse before buying it. She looked back at the bricks, 43 across, mortar crumbling. 40, then hoofbeats. The sound cut through everything fast, irregular. A horse pushed hard. Ellen's head turned with everyone else's. Couldn't help it. The rhythm was wrong for a casual ride into town. This was urgent. The horse was a Morgan, dark bay. Lathered white at the chest. The rider didn't dismount at the hitching post like a normal person. Just swung down while the animal was still moving, boots hitting dust, and stood there at the edge of the crowd. Trail dust thick on his shoulders. Hat pulled low enough that she couldn't see his face, just the line of his jaw, working jaw, grinding something back. The crowd parted without him asking. He didn't push through, didn't need to, just stood at the periphery, one hand on his horse's neck, and waited. The auctioneer paused. "Sir, if you're here for the auction, current bid is $40 for 47. 2 words, flat, no negotiation in them." Ellen's hands tightened on Samuel. The baby whimpered. Her knuckles went white against his blanket flour sack cotton, thin from washing. Seams splitting under her nails. She felt the threads pop. 1, 2, 3. The man still hadn't looked at her. He was looking past her shoulder, at the mountains maybe, or at nothing. His hand stayed on his horse's neck. Steady. The animal's breathing slowed under his palm. "I'll need to see the cash, sir." The stranger reached into his coat, pulled out a leather pouch. Didn't open it. Just held it where the auctioneer could see the weight of it. The banker started to say something. Stopped. The man with rope burns spat tobacco juice onto the platform wood. Someone in the back of the crowd muttered. Ellen couldn't hear the words, but she heard the tone. Outsider? Stranger? Who the hell is he? The auctioneer licked his thumb again. Turned another page. $47. Going once. Ellen counted Samuel's heartbeats against her chest. Fast. Hummingbird fast. Her own felt slow in comparison. Thick. Like her blood had turned to clay. Going twice. The stranger's jaw stopped working. He looked at her then. First time. His eyes were the gavel cracked against wood. Sold. Ellen's knees unlocked. She hadn't realized they were locked until they weren't. Samuel's weight shifted in her arms and she pulled him closer, felt his damp breath against her throat. The stranger was already moving toward the courthouse steps, toward the clerk's office, where they'd do the paperwork, where he'd sign his name and she'd become his, whatever that meant. She didn't follow. Not yet. just stood on the platform with her dress soaked through and her boots falling apart. And 43 bricks burning into her vision. The crowd was already dispersing. Over. Done. Not their problem anymore? Mrs. Henley walked away first. Didn't look back. Ellen looked at the stranger's horse instead. The Morgan stood hip-shot at the rail, head low, exhausted. There was a brand on its left flank, not the stranger's brand. Someone else's mark. Previous owner. The saddle horn was wrapped in rawhide. Repaired so many times the original leather barely showed through. A man who fixed things instead of replacing them. Ellen didn't know if that was good or bad. She pressed her cheek to Samuel's head, breathed in the smell of him milk and soap and something indefinably baby, and stepped down from the platform. The wood creaked under her weight. Her boots hit dirt. Dust puffed up around her ankles. She had $47 worth of debts. Now she had a man she didn't know. One problem traded for another. She walked toward the courthouse steps, where he'd disappeared inside. Samuel's hand opened and closed against her collar. Grasping at nothing, she put her finger in his palm and let him hold on. If you've ever watched the dust settle after a hard moment in your own life, I'd be grateful to hear where you're reading from today. Sometimes it helps to know we're not alone in these stories. The clerk's office smelled like ink and dust and old paper. Ellen stood in the doorway, holding Samuel, watching the stranger empty his pockets onto the desk. Silver dollars first, heavy coins, Morgan type, each one hitting wood with a distinct clink. He counted them in twos, lips moving slightly. No sound except the coins and a fly buzzing against the window glass. 20 silver dollars. Then folded bills from his inside coat pocket. He smoothed each one flat before adding it to the pile. His hands were scarred across the knuckles, rope burns visible on both palms. Dirt under the nails, like hers. The clerk licked his pen, scratched something in his ledger. The ink was too wet, it bled at the edges of whatever he'd written. He slid a receipt across the desk. One woman, one child, debts settled. Ellen read it upside down. Her name spelled wrong. Cartwright instead of Cartwright. The stranger pulled the receipt closer, studied it. She watched his eyes move across the words. Slow. Very slow. He picked up the pen, held it wrong, too tight, knuckles white, started to write. The letters came out large and uneven, a capital J that took up half the line. Then he paused, set the pen down, picked it up again, pressed so hard the nib scratched. Brennan. 30 seconds to write 2 words. Ellen shifted Samuel to her other hip. The baby grabbed at her hair, got a fistful, pulled. She didn't stop him. Just stood there watching Brennan. That was his name now. Not stranger, pushed the receipt back across the desk. The clerk blotted it, slid a copy to Brennan. You're all set then. Brennan folded the paper, put it in his coat pocket, turned and walked past Ellen without looking at her. She followed him outside because there was nowhere else to go. The Morgan horse stood at the rail. Brennan's hand went to the animal's neck, automatic, and the horse leaned into the touch. He stood there a long moment, looking past Ellen's shoulder at something she couldn't see. Mountains, maybe, or just empty air. Got a wagon coming, he said, voice rough like he didn't use it much. Ranch is half-day north. Ellen waited. Samuel made a wet sound against her neck, gumming at her collar. Or there's a stage east tomorrow. Brennan's jaw worked. Your pick. The stage went to Cheyenne. Ellen had $2.30 in her reticule. Enough for a ticket, but nothing after. No one waiting in Cheyenne. No one waiting anywhere. She looked at Brennan's hands on the reins. Scarred knuckles. Rope burns. Dirt under nails. Like hers. Roof leak, she asked. He shook his head once. She shifted Samuel to her other hip again. The baby was getting heavy. 3 months old and already solid. Thomas's son. She pushed the thought away. Then we'll ride. Brennan nodded. Didn't smile. Didn't say anything else. Just pulled a canteen from his saddle and set it on the edge of a nearby water trough. Then he walked away to check his horse's bridle, giving her space. Ellen picked up the canteen. Canvas cover. Leather strap. She unscrewed the cap. The water inside tasted like iron and sage. She drank long, throat working. Watching Brennan over the rim. He wasn't watching her back. That was when she noticed his saddlebag. The flap had come loose. Hanging open. Inside, among the folded blanket and spare ammunition, she saw something that didn't belong. A teething ring, ivory, small enough to fit a baby's hand. Ellen's throat closed. The canteen rim pressed against her bottom lip. Water dripped onto her wrist. Cold. Brennan had a child's teething ring in his saddlebag. The wagon arrived 20 minutes later. Flatbed, 2 barrels lashed to the sides, a crate of supplies in the back. The driver was Mexican, older, with a serape across his shoulders woven with red thread along the border. He tipped his hat when he saw Ellen. "Señora?" The word was soft, not a question, just acknowledgement. Brennan loaded her carpet bag into the wagon bed. 1 bag, light. He didn't ask what was in it, just set it down next to the supply crate and turned to help her up. She climbed before he could touch her, 1 hand on the wagon side, the other holding Samuel against her chest. The boards were rough under her palm. A splinter caught in the meat of her thumb. She felt it go in, but didn't stop moving. The driver clucked to the horses. The wagon lurched forward. Ellen sat on the bench, Samuel in her lap, watching the courthouse square fall away behind them. Mrs. Henley was still there, talking to 2 other women. Their heads turned, watched. Ellen faced forward. Brennan rode ahead on the Morgan. He sat loose in the saddle, hips moving with the horse's gait. When the animal broke into a trot, he didn't post, just absorbed the motion through his spine, easy, like breathing. His head turned left, then right, scanning, not looking for threats, just looking. The way someone reads a book they've read before. The prairie opened up around them, blue stem grass tall enough to brush the wagon wheels, seed heads gold in the late sun. The driver hummed something under his breath. No tune Ellen recognized. Just sound. After a mile he spoke. "Patron?" "He good man." Ellen didn't answer. Samuel's fist was in her hair again. Pulling. She extracted his fingers, 1 at a time, and he immediately grabbed her collar instead. "Quiet," the driver continued. He glanced at her, then back at the horses. "Muy callado, but good. See." Ellen watched Brennan's back. The dust on his shoulders was thick, gray-brown, settled into the fabric. His hat was pulled low. She still hadn't seen his full face. Just that jaw, those hands, that teething ring. "See," she said. The driver smiled, started humming again. The sun moved. The wagon rolled. Ellen counted things to keep her mind occupied. Wheel rotations. Time Samuel shifted in her lap. Clouds shaped like animals, 3 sheep, 1 dog, something that might have been a bear. The blue stem grass rattled in the wind. Dry sound, like paper. A rifle crack echoed somewhere to the west. Single shot. Ellen's hands tightened on Samuel. The driver didn't react. Brennan reined his horse in a slow circle, looked toward the sound, then kept riding. 10 minutes later, he was back. Something wrapped in a bandana tied to his saddle. Rabbit, probably. Already gutted. Ellen saw the dark stain seeping through the cloth. Noon came hard and bright. The driver pulled the wagon to a stop near a creek that cut through the prairie in a shallow depression. Cottonwood trees grew along the banks, their leaves already turning yellow at the edges. Brennan dismounted, led his horse to the water. Ellen climbed down. Her legs were stiff. She walked to the far side of the largest cottonwood, put her back to the men, and unbuttoned her bodice. Samuel latched immediately, his small hand kneading against her. The milk let down with a tingle that made her wince. She looked at the creek while he nursed. The water was clear enough to see the stones at the bottom, brown and gray and one of the color of rust. When Samuel was finished, she buttoned up and walked back. Brennan was there, standing by the wagon. He held out something wrapped in cloth. Jerky. The smell of its salt and smoke made her stomach clench. "For you," he said. She took it. Their fingers didn't touch. He cleared his throat. "Baby got a name." Ellen looked down at Samuel. The baby was drowsy, eyes half closed, milk drunk. "Samuel." Brennan nodded. Slow, like he was testing the weight of the word. "That's a strong name." Silence. The creek burbled over stones. Somewhere a bird called, high and sharp. "Ranch ain't much," Brennan said. He was looking at the horizon, not at her. "2 rooms. You'll have the bed." Ellen put a piece of jerky in her mouth. Chewed. It was tough, oversalted, and exactly what she needed. She swallowed. "Where will you sleep?" "Barn." One word mean flat, not open for discussion. The driver called something in Spanish. Brennan walked back to his horse. Ellen climbed into the wagon with Samuel. They kept moving north. The afternoon stretched. The prairie changed subtly, more switchgrass mixed with the blue stem, the land rising in gentle swells. Ellen's eyelids grew heavy. Samuel slept against her chest, his breath warm through her dress. She let her head drop forward, chin to collarbone, and dozed. She woke when the wagon stopped. The driver was pointing. Brennan had ridden close, his horse alongside the wagon bed. Samuel was awake, eyes wide. One hand reaching out toward the baby's fist closed around the brim of Brennan's hat, felt crumpled in his grip, dusty. Samuel pulled. Brennan's head tilted with the motion, but he didn't pull away. Didn't smile. Just sat there, reins loose in one hand, letting a 3-month-old baby destroy the shape of his hat. Samuel made a sound. Happy. Ellen's throat tightened. Brennan gently extracted his hat from the small fist. Put it back on. His eyes met Ellen's for half a second. Then he reined his horse forward. "Just over that rise," he said. The wagon crested the ridge. Ellen saw it all at once. Cabin with a stone chimney, smoke coming from it. Already the driver must have ridden ahead earlier. Barn to the left, listing slightly to the east, the roof sagging in the middle. Corral with 3 horses, 1 paint, 2 bays. Garden patch visible behind the cabin, half the rows choked with bindweed, the other half bare dirt, Mountains in the distance, purple dark against the sky. No other buildings, no neighbors, no eyes watching. Just land and sky and wind. The cabin door opened. A man stepped out. Not Brennan. Someone else. Younger. He waved. Ellen's stomach dropped. She'd thought it would be just them. Her and Samuel and Brennan. But there was someone else living here. Someone she didn't know. Someone who would have opinions about a woman bought at auction. The wagon rolled down the slope toward the cabin. Samuel grabbed her collar again. Ellen counted his heartbeats. Tried to count them. Lost track at 17. The young man walked toward them, still waving. Ellen's hand went to her reticule. Inside, wrapped in her handkerchief, was the $2.30. Not enough for the stage, not enough for anything, but it was hers. The teething ring in Brennan's saddlebag wasn't hers. Wasn't her business, but it meant something. A child. His child, maybe, or someone else's child. Dead or alive or gone. She needed to know, but she couldn't ask. Not yet. Not until she understood what kind of man had bought her freedom. The young man reached the wagon. He wasn't young at all. Lines at his eyes, gray in his black hair. The red thread serape, same one. The driver. Tomas. Her breath came easier. Brennan dismounted. Tomas said something in Spanish, gestured at the cabin. Brennan nodded. Turned to Ellen. I'll show you inside. She climbed down. Samuel's weight shifted. She followed Brennan to the cabin door. He opened it. Stepped aside. Waited for her to enter first. Ellen looked at his face. Really looked. The hat brim was up now, and she could see his eyes. Dark. Tired. Old in a way that had nothing to do with years. She stepped inside and smelled it immediately. Lavender soap. A woman's soap. Not men's lie. Not horse and leather and work. Lavender. Someone else had been here. Recently. The lavender smell came from the floor. Fresh scrubbed boards. Still damp in the corners. Tomas had cleaned before their arrival. Ellen saw the bucket by the door. Soap scum dried on the rim. Not a woman's presence. Just a man trying to make things decent. Her shoulders dropped. She shifted Samuel's weight. The front room was dim after the bright sun. Ellen's eyes adjusted slowly. Table. Pine. Scarred along one edge like someone had dragged something metal across it repeatedly. 2 chairs. Cast iron stove in the corner. Pipe going up through the roof. Shelf on the far wall with tin plates, 3 of them, and 2 cups. The smell underneath the lavender was what she'd expected: old smoke, lye soap, dust, and man smell. Leather and sweat and work. Brennan walked to the back room. This way. The second room was smaller. Bed against the wall, rope spring with a corn husk mattress, bureau next to it, 3 drawers, window facing east, no curtains. The glass was clean. Ellen noticed that. Clean glass in a bachelor's cabin, meant something. She just didn't know what. I'll be in the barn, Brennan said. He was already backing toward the door. There's a well out back. Pump handle's touchy. Jiggle it some if it sticks. Wait. He stopped. Hat in his hands now. Fingers working the brim. Ellen shifted Samuel to her other hip. The man outside, Tomas, he live here. Line shack 2 miles south. Comes most days for work. So it's just you here? Yeah. Ellen looked at the bed, back at Brennan. You sure about the barn? His jaw worked. Yeah. He left. The door didn't slam, just closed. Soft. Ellen stood in the middle of the front room holding Samuel. Listening to Brennan's boots cross the porch, down the steps, fade toward the barn. Samuel made a wet sound. Hungry again already. Ellen went to the back room and sat on the bed edge. The rope spring sagged under her weight. Squeaking. She unbuttoned her bodice and let him nurse while she looked around. The bureau drawers were closed. She reached over with her free hand and pulled the top one open. 3 pairs of socks inside. Wool. Darned at the heels. She moved them to one side of the drawer and set Samuel's spare gown there. Closed the drawer. Second drawer. This one stuck. She pulled harder. It came free suddenly and she nearly dropped it. Inside women's hair combs. Tortoiseshell. 4 of them. Dust in the grooves. Ellen picked one up, ran her thumb over the teeth. Not his mother's, these were too fine. Too expensive. Wife's sister. She set it back. Closed the drawer. Didn't ask. Third drawer. Empty. Completely empty. She opened her carpet bag and unpacked. 1 calico dress, faded blue, Samuel's 3 cotton gowns, her Bible, leather cover cracked at the spine. The daguerreotype of Thomas, she looked at it. His young face in Union uniform. Optimistic, then set it on top of the bureau. Last, the broken rosary. The string had snapped 2 weeks ago and she'd been meaning to restring it. Hadn't. She coiled it in the drawer's corner. When Samuel finished nursing, she buttoned up and carried him to the front room. Through the window, she could see Tomas building a fire in a pit outside. Cast iron pot already balanced on stones. Brennan was at the barn, unsaddling his horse. His movements were slow, deliberate. He ran his hand down the animal's flank, checking for heat. Ellen went to the shelf. The tin plates were U.S. Army surplus stamped on the bottom. She picked one up, turned it over, dented along one edge, set it back. The shelf had a dust line where other items had been, a wide gap in the middle. He'd cleared space for her things, moved his own somewhere else. She ran her finger through the dust. It came away gray on her fingertip. The stove had wood stacked next to it. Pine. From the smell. She opened the door. Coals still glowing from whenever Tomas had started the fire earlier. She added 2 pieces of wood. The bark caught immediately. Flames licking up. Sap popped. The smell was sweet. She found a kettle on a hook by the stove. Took it outside to the well. The pump handle was exactly like Brennan said, touchy. She worked it up and down 4 times before water came. Cold. It splashed into the kettle and she carried it back inside. Set it on the stove to heat. Samuel started fussing. She walked him, bouncing, humming nothing in particular, just sound. Through the window she watched Tomas work. He'd skinned the rabbit, jointed it, had the pieces in the pot now with water. He added something from his coat pocket. Wild onions, maybe? The smell started to drift. The sun dropped lower. Orange light slanted through the east window. Lit up dust motes in the air. Ellen counted them. Lost count. Started over. Footsteps on the porch. Brennan's knock was quiet. 2 taps. "Supper's on sama," he said through the door. Ellen opened it. He was already walking away, toward the fire pit where Tomas was stirring the pot. She followed. Tomas ladled stew into tin plates, 3 plates, handed one to Ellen, one to Brennan, kept one. The men stood. Ellen stood. No one suggested sitting. She balanced Samuel on her hip and ate one-handed, the fork awkward in her left hand. The rabbit was good. Tough but good. The onions were actually prairie turnips, bittersweet. They ate in silence except for the scrape of forks on tin. Samuel grabbed for Ellen's fork. She gave him a small piece of turnip. He gummed it, made a face, spit it out, grabbed for the fork again. Brennan cut a piece of rabbit into smaller bits, put them on the edge of Ellen's plate without saying anything. She fed one to Samuel. He gummed it, swallowed, reached for more. The sun touched the horizon. The sky went purple, then gray. Tomas dumped the remaining stew back into the pot, covered it, banked the fire. He said something in Spanish to Brennan. Brennan nodded. Tomas untied his horse from the corral rail, swung up, tipped his hat to Ellen. "Buenas noches, señora." "Good night." He rode south. The hoofbeats faded. Ellen stood in the yard holding Samuel and her empty plate. Brennan took the plate from her. "I'll wash these. I got it." He walked to the well. Ellen went to the cabin. Inside, she lit the lamp on the table. Coal oil. Glass chimney. Slight smoke when she first turned up the wick. She adjusted it until the flame steadied. The light was yellow, warm, pushed the shadows to the corners. She laid Samuel in the bureau drawer, patted it with her spare dress first. He fit exactly, legs straight, arms at his sides. His eyes were already closing. Ellen went to the front room. Through the window she could see Brennan at the barn, lantern in his hand. He climbed the ladder to the loft. The light moved, settled, stayed. She looked at the door. The bar was there, thick oak plank with iron brackets hammered into the frame. She lifted it, slid it into place. Thunk. She stood there, hand still on the wood. Heard footsteps outside Brennan's. She knew them, now heard them stop at the bottom of the porch steps. Wait. She pressed her forehead to the door, closed her eyes. The footsteps continued. Back to the barn. Ellen went to the back room. Samuel was asleep. She lay down next to the bureau, still dressed, on top of the corn husk mattress. It rustled under her. The rope spring squeaked. She looked at the ceiling. 6 beams, hand-hewn, adze marks visible even in the lamplight from the other room. She counted. Days since Thomas died. 43. Dollars she'd been worth. 47. Her age. 22. The lamp in the other room flickered. She watched the shadows dance on the ceiling. Outside, the wind picked up. The cabin creaked. The stovepipe rattled slightly. Far off. A coyote called. Another answered. Ellen's hand went to her pocket. Empty. The $2.30 were still in her reticule on the bureau. But her hand kept searching. For what? She didn't know. Then she remembered. The teething ring in Brennan's saddlebag. She hadn't taken it, hadn't touched it, but she'd seen it. And now, lying in the dark in a stranger's cabin with her baby sleeping in a drawer, she needed to know. Whose child had used that ring? Where was that child now? The pump handle squeaked. 3 times before water flowed, Ellen learned that the first morning, Brennan was already gone when she woke, just the indent in the hay bale outside the barn door where he'd sat to pull on his boots. The squeak cut through the pre-dawn quiet. She lay in bed counting. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Then the rush of water into a bucket. She got up, changed Samuel's diaper cloth, the old one soaked through and smelling sharp, laid him back in the bureau drawer while she dressed. The calico was wrinkled from being slept in. She smoothed it with her hands. Didn't help. In the front room, the stove was already going. 2 pieces of pine burning. The smell sweet. Coffee pot on top, steaming. Brennan's doing. She poured a cup. The tin was hot. She wrapped her hand in her skirt, hem to hold it. Through the window, she watched him work, mucking the barn, pitchfork moving steady, loading manure into a wheelbarrow. His shirt was already dark with sweat across the shoulders even though the sun was barely up. He didn't stop when the wheelbarrow was full, just kept forking until the stall was clean, then wheeled it out to the garden, dumped it. Ellen drank her coffee, bitter, too strong. She drank it anyway. Samuel woke crying. She nursed him in the chair by the stove, watching the door. Brennan didn't come in. The sun rose higher. The room got warm. She burped Samuel, changed him again, set him in the drawer with a wooden spoon to gnaw on. The handle was worn smooth. Outside, she found the clothesline strung between a cottonwood and the cabin wall. Hemp rope, fraying at one end. She had Samuel's diaper cloths to wash and her own undergarments, 3 days of wear making them stiff. The creek was 50 yards past the garden. She walked there with the bundle, Samuel on her hip. The water was cold enough to hurt. She knelt on a flat stone, dunked the cloths, scrubbed them against the washboard she'd found hanging on a nail by the well. Zinc, corrugated, the ridges rough under her knuckles. By the 3rd cloth, her hands were red. By the 6th, the skin split at 2 knuckles. She used the back of the washboard to scrub, keeping her split knuckles away from the metal. Blood still came, mixed with creek water. Diluted pink, washed away. She hung everything on the line. The wind was picking up from the west. The cloth snapped. She went back inside. The cabin needed exploring. She started with the cupboard by the stove. Flour in a tin, maybe 10 pounds left. Sugar cone wrapped in paper, half gone. Coffee beans in a jar. Salt pork in the root cellar outside. She'd seen the door cut into the ground near the back of the cabin. She opened it. Steep steps down into darkness. Cool air rising. She didn't go down. Not yet. The garden was half dead. Bindweed choked everything on the west side. The east side was just dirt, a few withered tomato plants. She walked the rows, found 3 tomatoes still good, small. 1 split along the side, but the inside was firm. She picked them, wiped them on her skirt, brought them in. For supper, she made what she could. Fried salt pork, sliced the tomatoes, heated cornmeal mush left over from breakfast, set it on the table. Brennan came in when the sun touched the horizon. He washed at the basin by the door, his back to her. Water sluiced off his hands, dripped on the floor. He dried them on a rag hanging from a nail. They ate. Forks on tin plates, Samuel on Ellen's lap. grabbing for her food. She gave him a piece of pork fat. He gummed it, drooled, dropped it, grabbed for her fork. Brennan finished first, pushed back his chair. Need firewood? Got it. He nodded. Left. She heard his footsteps cross to the barn. The next morning was the same. Pump squeak. Coffee already made. Brennan gone. Ellen washed more clothes. Found the garden hoe leaning against the cabin wall. Spent an hour pulling bindweed. The roots were thick, white, wouldn't come clean. They broke off in her hands. She pulled what she could. That afternoon she found eggs in the henhouse. 4 of them, brown, still warm. She hadn't known there was a henhouse until she heard the chickens clucking. It was behind the barn, built from scrap lumber. 1 wall listing. The hens were barred rocks, fat, well-fed. Someone had been taking care of them. She made eggs for breakfast the next day. Scrambled with a splash of milk she found in the root cellar, stored in a ceramic jug. Brennan ate them. Said nothing. Left. On the 4th morning, Ellen came outside and nearly fell. The porch step was broken. The board cracked clean through the middle. Her boot went through, caught. She jerked back. Samuel clutched tight against her chest. Her heart hammered. She pulled her foot free. The board splintered worse. By afternoon, the step was fixed. New board, hammer still sitting on the porch rail. Ellen picked up the hammer, tested the weight, set it back down. The next morning, she found Brennan's work shirt on the chair by the stove. He must have left it. There was a tear at the shoulder seam, the fabric pulled apart, threads hanging loose. She picked it up, held it to the light. The shirt was blue chambray, collarless, worn soft from washing. Sweat salt stiffened the armpits. She threaded a needle. Small stitches, close together, white thread on blue fabric. Her mother had taught her to sew. Straight seam, even tension. Knotted off clean. She folded the shirt when she finished. Left it on the table. The next day Brennan wore it. She saw him at the corral, mending fence. The white stitches visible across his shoulder when he reached up to hammer a post. He didn't mention it. She didn't either. That evening there was milk on the table. Fresh milk in the ceramic jug, cold from the root cellar. More than what was there before. Ellen picked up the jug, heavy. She poured some for Samuel's bottle. The baby drank it, eyes half closed, content. She found cornmeal in the cupboard, mixed it with the milk, a little precious sugar, bacon fat from the salt pork, baked it in the cast iron skillet on the stove. The edges burned. She left them burned. Cut the cornbread into squares, put half on a plate, covered it with a cloth, left it on the table. The next morning it was gone. The plate was washed, sitting on the shelf with the others. Saturday came different. Tomas arrived earlier than usual, his horse lathered like he'd ridden hard. He tied up at the corral and walked to where Brennan was shoeing a horse. Ellen watched from the cabin window while she nursed Samuel. Tomas gestured, talking fast. Spanish. The words incomprehensible but the tone clear. Excited. Brennan shook his head. Tomas gestured more. Pointed south. Brennan shook his head again. Tomas walked to the cabin. Knocked. Ellen buttoned her bodice and opened the door. Señora, tonight there is fandango. In the settlement. Music. Dancing. He smiled. You come. See you and Patron. Ellen looked past him to where Brennan was bent over the horse's hoof, rasp in hand. I don't think... Please, Señora. Is good. You meet people. I don't dance no more anyway. The words came out flat. Tomas's smile faded. He nodded. See, I understand. He tipped his hat, walked back to his horse. Ellen closed the door, rocked Samuel, who was drowsy from feeding. The baby's breath was warm against her neck. She hummed. Nothing in particular, just sound. The afternoon stretched. Ellen sat on the porch, mending another of Brennan's shirts. This one had a tear at the elbow. Samuel lay on a blanket at her feet, staring at his hands, discovering his fingers. The sun was warm. Wind from the west carried the smell of sage. Boots on the steps. Ellen looked up. Brennan stood in the yard, hat in his hands. His fingers worked the brim, around and around. Your husband. He stopped, started again. He treat you right? Ellen's needle paused. She looked at him. His eyes were on the horizon, not on her. Yeah, he did. Brennan nodded. Ellen set the shirt in her lap. Just couldn't keep from owing. The words hung there. Brennan's jaw worked. He put his hat on, turned toward the barn, stopped, turned back. How'd he die? Fever. 3 days from first cough to last breath. Brennan's hands flexed at his sides. Opened, closed. You loved him? It wasn't a question, but Ellen answered anyway. Yeah. He nodded once. Walked to the barn. The door creaked when he opened it. Creaked when it closed. Ellen picked up the shirt. Threaded the needle again. Her hands were shaking slightly. She pressed them flat against the fabric until they steadied. Then she sewed. Small stitches, even tension. Knotted off clean. That evening after supper, Brennan didn't go straight to the barn. He stood at the corral fence, watching the horses. Ellen washed the tin plates at the basin, watching him through the window. His shoulders were slumped. Not tired slumped. Something else. She dried the plates, stacked them on the shelf, picked up Samuel and went outside. The air was cooling, the sky going purple at the edges. She walked to the corral, stood beside Brennan. Not close. 3 feet between them. Samuel grabbed at her hair. The woman who owned those combs, Ellen said. In the bureau. Brennan's hands tightened on the fence rail. The wood creaked. Was she yours? My sister? Ellen waited. The wind pushed her skirt against her legs. Samuel made a wet sound. Blew bubbles. Was? Ellen repeated. Yeah. One word. The fence rail creaked again. Brennan's knuckles were white. Ellen shifted Samuel to her other hip. The teething ring. In your saddlebag. I saw it when the flap came loose. Was that hers too? Brennan's head turned. Slow. He looked at her full on for the first time since they'd arrived. His eyes were darker than she'd thought, almost black in the fading light. You asking or accusing? Ellen's throat went tight. Asking Brennan's hands came off the fence rail. He stepped back. Not far, just enough that the space between them felt wider. Asking who she was. Your sister. What happened to her? Ellen bounced Samuel. Automatic. The baby grabbed at her collar. I needed to know who you were. What kind of man? She stopped. Started over. I saw the ring when the saddlebag flap came loose. That's all. Just saw it. Brennan looked at her for a long moment, then back at the horizon. The purple was deepening to black at the edges. His jaw worked. Ground back whatever he was chewing on. Sarah, he said. My sister. 8 years younger than me. We got separated when our folks died. County split us up. Different families. He paused. Didn't see her again till I was 17. Tracked her down. She'd married by then. Had a boy. Jesse. 2 years old. The wind picked up. Ellen's skirt snapped against her legs. Fever took them both. Same winter I near froze in that barn. Sarah first, then Jesse 3 days later. His voice went flat. Empty. I was there. Watched it. Couldn't do nothing. Ellen's chest hurt. She swallowed. The teething ring was his. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. He picked up his hat from where he'd set it on the fence post, turned it in his hands. Me too. He walked to the barn. Ellen stood at the corral holding Samuel, watching the door close. Not a slam, just a close. The sky went darker. The first stars appeared. She went inside, fed Samuel, laid him in the bureau drawer. He fussed, not wanting to settle. She rocked the drawer gently until his eyes closed. That night she didn't bar the door. The next morning the coffee was already made when she woke. 2 weeks passed. Ellen found a rhythm. Wake, nurse Samuel, wash at the creek, tend what she could in the garden. Brennan worked from before dawn until after dusk. They spoke only necessities. Need firewood. Got it. Eggs this morning? 4. But small things changed. He fixed the sagging porch rail without her asking. She found his other work shirt, mended the cuff, left it folded on the table. He brought milk from town for Samuel. She baked more cornbread, left it covered. They were trading something. Not words, just care. Samuel was 5 months now, rolling over on his own, pushing up on his arms. One morning Ellen turned her back while hanging wash and heard him making sounds, happy sounds, not crying. She turned back. He was gone. The blanket was empty. Her heart stopped. She dropped the wet cloth, ran. Samuel. She found him 10 feet away, face down in the dirt, scooting toward the barn. His gown was filthy, dirt on his cheek, but he was moving, actually moving himself forward, arms pulling, legs pushing. Ellen scooped him up. He wailed, arms reaching past her toward the barn, toward Brennan, who was standing in the barn doorway. He ain't supposed to be moving like that yet, Ellen said. Her voice came out breathless. Brennan walked over, looked at Samuel. The baby's face was scrunched, crying, reaching. How old is he? 5 months. He's strong. Samuel's wails faded to whimpers. His fist opened and closed, reaching toward Brennan. Ellen held him tighter. Brennan crouched, put out one finger, Samuel's whole fist wrapped around Brennan's scarred knuckle. The baby pulled, trying to get closer. His grip was tight. "That's a grip," Brennan said. Quiet. To Samuel, not to her. "Gonna be strong when you grow up." Ellen's throat closed. She swallowed. Brennan stood. Samuel kept hold of his finger. The baby's arm stretched between them. "I shouldn't have asked about the ring like that," Ellen said. "Like I was... You had a right." Brennan extracted his finger from Samuel's grip. Gentle. The baby fussed. "Had a right to know what kind of man brought you here." He went back to the barn. Ellen stood there holding Samuel, watching the door close. That evening, Brennan didn't leave after supper. He sat while Ellen cleared the plates. Samuel was on the floor with the wooden spoon, banging it against the chair leg. The sound echoed. "I could hold him," Brennan said. "While you work." Ellen's hands stilled in the basin. Water dripped. She dried her hands on her skirt, picked up Samuel. He was sticky with cornbread crumbs, drool on his chin. She wiped his face with the rag. Handed him to Brennan. Brennan took him wrong. Too stiff, arms straight. Samuel's head lolled. He started to cry. "Support his head," Ellen said. She moved Brennan's hand. "There. And don't hold him like a sack of grain. Rock him. Gentle." Brennan adjusted. Samuel kept crying some. His face went red, mouth wide. "Bounce him." "Little bit." Brennan bounced. Too hard. Samuel wailed louder. "Softer. Like this." Ellen took Samuel back, showed him. Small movements, her whole body swaying. Samuel's cries faded to hiccups. She handed him back. Brennan tried again. Stiff at first, then remembering. Small bounce. Sway. Samuel quieted. His fist found Brennan's collar. Grabbed hold. Ellen finished the dishes. When she turned around, Brennan was walking the length of the room, Samuel against his shoulder. He was humming. 3 notes. Same 3 notes. Over and over. No tune, just sound. Samuel's eyes were closing. Ellen stood watching. Water dripped from her hands onto the floor. She wiped them on her skirt. Brennan looked at Samuel's face. The baby's mouth had gone slack, eyes fully closed. "He's asleep," Brennan whispered. "Yeah. Where should I—" "The drawer. In the back room." Brennan carried Samuel carefully, one hand supporting the head the way Ellen had shown him. He laid the baby down so gentle, hand staying under the head until it touched the padded dress. He straightened, looked at the sleeping baby. His thumb moved, unconscious, stroking Samuel's hair once, twice. Ellen stood in the doorway. Her chest ached. She pressed her palm there, felt her heart beat against it. Brennan turned, saw her watching. He walked past her to the front room, grabbed his hat from the table. "Night. Night." The door closed. Ellen went to the window, watched him cross to the barn, lantern in hand. The light climbed to the loft, settled. She didn't bar the door. The next evening, Brennan stayed again. Held Samuel while Ellen cooked beans for the next day. The baby fell asleep in his arms. Brennan sat in the chair, didn't move, didn't want to wake him. Ellen finished with the beans, put the pot on the back of the stove for morning, turned. Brennan was still sitting there. Samuel asleep against his chest. The lamp on the table cast yellow light across them. Brennan's hand on Samuel's back, rising and falling with the baby's breath. A week later, Samuel laughed for the first time. Brennan was crouched by the stove, adding wood. His hat was on the table. Samuel was on his blanket, watching. Brennan stood too fast. His head hit the stovepipe. The hat fell off the table, landed on the floor. Samuel shrieked, not crying, laughing. Pure sound. Hiccup breathed, his whole body shaking with it. Brennan froze, looked at the baby, at the hat, back at the baby. He picked up the hat, dropped it again. Samuel shrieked louder, kicked his legs. His face was red from laughing, mouth wide, showing his two bottom teeth. Ellen's hand went to her mouth. A sound came out. Laughter. She was laughing. First time since Thomas died. The sound felt strange in her throat, rusty, but it came anyway. Brennan looked at her. His mouth, the corner, twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. He picked up the hat, dropped it. Samuel shrieked again. Brennan did it 3 more times before Samuel finally wore himself out, hiccuping, drool running down his chin. That night, Brennan stayed until full dark, helped Ellen put Samuel to bed, stood at the bureau drawer looking down at the sleeping baby for a long moment before he left. Ellen walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" She gestured at the drawer, at the cabin, at everything. "For making him laugh." Brennan put his hat on. "He's a good boy." "Yeah." He left. Ellen stood at the window watching the barn. The lantern light climbed. But it didn't settle right away. It moved back and forth, like Brennan was pacing. She pressed her forehead to the glass. The cold seeped through. Something was changing. She felt it in her ribs, in the way her breath came different when Brennan was near, in the way Samuel reached for him now, the way he laughed at Brennan's hat trick. They were becoming something. She just didn't know what, or if she wanted it, or if she was allowed to want it. The lamp in the barn settled, stayed. Ellen went to bed, lay in the dark counting ceiling beams. 6, hand-hewn. Adze marks visible. From the barn came that sound. 3 notes, hummed over and over. Ellen closed her eyes. Her hand found the space under her pillow. Empty. No teething ring. It had never been hers to take. But she'd seen it. And now she knew. Brennan had lost a child he loved. And now he was holding hers. November came cold. The sky turned the color of old pewter, low and pressing. Brennan hitched the wagon one morning, told Ellen they needed to go to settlement for winter supplies, flour, sugar, salt pork, things Tomas couldn't bring on horseback. "You should come," he said. "Get what you need for the baby." Ellen looked at Samuel, now 6 months, sitting up on his own, 2 teeth visible when he smiled. She thought about staying, thought about the cabin walls for another whole day. All right. The ride took 3 hours. Ellen held Samuel, watched the prairie roll past. Brennan didn't talk. She didn't either. The silence felt different than before. Heavier. Like something unsaid was taking up space between them. The settlement was 10 buildings on a dirt street. General store, saloon, blacksmith, church. Ellen saw the women first. 3 of them outside the dry goods, heads together. They stopped talking when the wagon passed. stared. Ellen's face went hot. She looked down at Samuel. The baby grabbed at her collar. Brennan, tied up at the general store, helped Ellen down. His hand on her elbow was brief, careful. She felt eyes on her back, turned. The women were still staring. One leaned to whisper to another. All three looked away quick. Inside. The store smelled like coffee and new leather and something sharp. Lye soap, maybe? The shopkeeper nodded at Brennan, looked at Ellen. His eyes went to Samuel, then back to her face. His mouth thinned. Ellen walked to the fabric bolts while Brennan ordered supplies. Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against a bolt of calico. Blue with white flowers. Pretty. Too pretty for someone like her. The door opened. Mrs. Henley came in. Saw Ellen. Her face did something complicated surprise, then calculation, then something that looked like pity but felt like judgment. She walked over. Ellen, dear? Ellen's jaw locked. Mrs. Henley? I heard you were... Mrs. Henley's eyes flicked to Brennan at the counter, then back, lowered her voice. That you'd found a situation. The word landed like a stone. Situation. Not home. Not family. Situation. I'm provided for, Ellen said. Her voice came out flat as stone. Of course. Of course. Mrs. Henley's hand touched Ellen's arm. Light. The way you touch something dirty you don't want to actually hold. I just wanted to make sure you're, well, that you're managing. That he's treating you decently. Managing. Not thriving. Not happy. Managing. And that last part, treating you decently, the implication hung there. Like Ellen was livestock that needed checking for bruises. Ellen pulled her arm back. I'm fine. Because if you need help, dear, the church has a fund for... Mrs. Henley glanced at the shopkeeper, lowered her voice more. For women in difficult circumstances, women who find themselves dependent. The words were careful, chosen. But Ellen heard what wasn't said. Women who sell themselves, women who trade their bodies for a roof. Whores. Her face burned, then went cold. Her hands clenched on the fabric bolt. The calico crushed under her fingers. I don't need charity, Ellen said. Each word came out separate, hard. I didn't mean to imply I'm fine. Ellen turned, walked to where Brennan stood at the counter. Samuel on her hip. The baby's fist tangled in her hair. She stood close enough to Brennan that her shoulder almost touched his arm. I'm ready to go. Brennan looked at her face. Something changed in his eyes. He turned to the shopkeeper. Add 4 yards of that blue calico. I don't need for curtains, Brennan said, not looking at her. Looking at the shopkeeper. Or whatever she wants. He paid. Cash on the counter. The shopkeeper counted it twice. Wrapped the fabric in brown paper. Handed it to Ellen without meeting her eyes. Outside, the 3 women were still there. Still watching. Ellen felt their eyes on her back like brands. She climbed into the wagon, Samuel tight against her chest. That was when she saw it. Tacked to the church wall. Housemaid wanted. Denver. $8 per month. Room and board included. $8. Enough to save? Enough to maybe, eventually get somewhere else. Somewhere people didn't know she'd been bought. She touched the poster. The paper was water-stained at the bottom edge. The ink bleeding. Someone had written a name and address in pencil below. Mrs. Adelaide Farnsworth, Capitol Hill. Ellen. Brennan was at the wagon. Hand out. She took one more look at the poster. Memorized the address. Climbed up. The ride back was quiet. Samuel fussed Baratin. Ellen bounced him, her arms mechanical. The town fell behind. The prairie opened up. Empty. No eyes watching. But she could still feel them. Those eyes. That judgment. That word. Situation. What did she say to you? Brennan asked. Ellen looked at her hands. Chapped. Red. The knuckles scarred now, white lines where the splits had healed. Nothing. Ellen. She wanted to make sure I was managing. Now, the word tasted like ashes. Managing my situation. Brennan's jaw muscle jumped. His hands tightened on the reins. What did you tell her? That I was fine? Ellen shifted Samuel. The baby was heavy. Getting heavier. What else could I say? The wagon rolled. Wheels creaking. Ellen counted the sounds. Creak and thump. Creak and thump. What did you tell people? She asked. About me. Brennan's hands tightened more. The reins creaked. Ain't told nobody nothing. But what am I? The words came out harder than she meant. Louder. What am I to you, your housekeeper, your ward, your... She stopped. Couldn't say the other word. The one Mrs. Henley had implied. You're Ellen, Brennan said. That ain't an answer. It's what I got. Ellen's throat closed. She turned away. Looked at the mountains in the distance. Purple dark. Far. That ain't enough. Brennan didn't respond. Just drove. His face stone. The cabin came into view. Brennan stopped the wagon. Helped Ellen down. Unloaded the supplies. Carried them inside without a word. Set them on the table. Left. Ellen stood in the empty cabin holding Samuel. The baby pulled at her collar. She set him in the bureau drawer. He fussed. She let him fuss. She went to the cupboard, found her carpet bag on the top shelf, dusty, pulled it out, set it on the bed. Her hands shook when she opened it. The brass clasp was loose. Always had been. Inside still smelled like the courthouse. Dust and old paper and fear. She took out Samuel's gowns from the bureau drawer, folded them, 3 gowns, threadbare at the hems, put them in the bag. Her spare dress, the calico faded blue, she held it. Thomas had bought it for her. First year of marriage when he still thought he'd make something of himself. She folded it, put it in. The daguerreotype of Thomas. She picked it up. His face looked back at her. Young. Optimistic. Dead now. Gone. She set it in the bag. The broken rosary. She coiled it. Put it in. Her Bible. She opened it. The family names written in the front in faded ink. Her mother's hand. Her grandmother's before that. All those women. All of them making do. All of them managing their situations. She closed it, started to put it in the bag, then stopped. Her hands were shaking worse now. She set the Bible down. Picked up Brennan's work shirt from the chair, the one she'd mended yesterday. her white stitches across the elbow. She held it. The fabric was soft from wear, stiff from sweat at the armpits. It smelled like him. Leather and work and wood smoke. She looked at her bag, half-packed, then at the shirt. Samuel screamed, not fussing, screaming. Ellen dropped the shirt, went to him, picked him up. He was red-faced, tears on his cheeks, inconsolable. She bounced him, walked him. He wouldn't settle. Just screamed and screamed like he knew, like he could feel her leaving already. Ellen's vision blurred. She blinked. The cabin swam. She sat on the bed edge, Samuel against her chest, and pressed her face to his head. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry." But she didn't know what she was sorry for. For almost leaving, for staying. For being the kind of woman who got auctioned. For being someone Mrs. Henley pitied. For being a situation. She stood, unpacked the bag, gowns back in the drawer, dress, daguerreotype back on the bureau, rosary, Bible. Samuel's screams faded to hiccups. She walked him, her whole body swaying, until he quieted, until his breathing evened out, until he slept against her shoulder, hot and damp. She laid him in the drawer. He didn't wake. Ellen stood at the window, looked out. Brennan was at the corral, his back to the cabin, shoulders hunched. The brown paper package of calico was still on the table. She unwrapped it. 4 yards, blue with white flowers. "For curtains," he'd said, "or whatever you want." She ran her hand over the fabric. Soft, clean, new. He'd bought this because Mrs. Henley had made her feel small, because he'd seen her face after. Ellen picked up the carpet bag, carried it back to the cupboard, put it on the top shelf, closed the door. Then she stood in the middle of the cabin, alone, with fabric in her hands and no idea what she was building toward. That night at supper, neither of them spoke. Samuel was between them on the floor with the wooden spoon. The sound of it hitting the chair leg echoed, echoed, echoed. Brennan left right after. Didn't stay to help with Samuel. Just put his hat on and walked out. Ellen washed the plates. Alone. Put Samuel to bed. Alone. Sat at the table in the lamplight, looking at the blue calico. For curtains? Or whatever you want. But what did she want? She didn't know anymore. Through the window, the barn was dark. No lantern. Brennan hadn't lit it. Ellen stood, went to the door, put her hand on the bar, then heard it. Footsteps. On the porch. Not leaving. Coming. A knock. Quiet. Ellen's hand dropped from the bar. She opened the door. Brennan stood there, hat in his hands. His face, "I need to tell you something," he said. Ellen stepped back. Let him in. The lamplight caught his face jaw tight, eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. He didn't sit, just stood in the middle of the room, hat crushed in his hands. "I've been thinking," Ellen said before he could speak. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Come spring, when the ground thaws, I might head to Denver." Brennan's hand stilled on the hat brim. "Why?" Not a question, just a word. Ellen's fingers found the table edge. Gripped. "Can't live on charity forever? That what you think this is, What else would I call it? Her voice rose. She pulled it back down. I got no money. No claim to nothing here. Can't be your obligation. Brennan's jaw worked. Ground back whatever he was chewing on. You reckon that's what this is? Ain't it? He was quiet so long, Ellen thought he wouldn't answer. The lamp flickered. Outside, the wind picked up. She started to turn away. Sit down, he said. The words weren't harsh, just firm. Ellen sat. Brennan pulled out the other chair, sat across from her, the table between them, his hat on the wood, finally sat down. Bought this ranch 3 years back, he said. His voice was rough, unused to this many words at once. Built it alone, just me and the work. Thought that's what I wanted. Ellen waited. Her hand still gripped the table edge. First winter near killed me. Brennan's jaw worked. December. Blizzard came through, lost 2 horses, holed up in that barn 4 days. No fire, ate snow. When it cleared, Tomas rode up from his line shack, found me half froze, took me back with him, fed me, brought me here when I could stand, asked if he could work for me. I said, yeah. He stopped, his hands on the table now, flat, the scars on his knuckles white in the lamplight. Thought work was enough. Thought I didn't need nobody. People just they leave or they die or they get took from you. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat hard. Thought if I didn't need nobody, I'd be fine. Ellen's throat hurt. She swallowed. Then I saw you on that platform. Brennan looked at her. Full on. First time with nothing held back. Saw myself. Somebody being sold. Somebody turned into a thing instead of a person. County had no right. But nobody was stopping it. Nobody was... He stopped. I couldn't watch it. Couldn't let it happen. You were sold. Ellen's voice came out whisper quiet. My sister and me, after our folks died, county split us up. Different families bought us. I was 12. Sarah was 8. Didn't see her for 5 years. Ellen couldn't breathe. Found her when I was 17. Tracked her down. She'd married. Had Jesse by then. 2 years old. Beautiful boy. His hands curled into fists, uncurled. Fever took them both. Same winter I bought this place. Sarah first, then Jesse 3 days later. I was there. Held him while he stopped. Couldn't do nothing. The silence stretched. Outside the wind died. The cold settled hard. I didn't buy you, Brennan said. Paid off what they said you owed. That's all. What you do now where you go, that's always been yours. Ellen's hands unclenched. Her palms ached where her nails had dug in. I can't keep taking without giving nothing back. You mend my shirts. That ain't. You cook. You make Samuel laugh. You make this place feel... He stopped. Started again. You make it so I don't wake up every morning wishing I'd froze that winter. Ellen looked at her hands. Red. Chapped. The knuckles scarred white where the splits had healed. I was drowning with Thomas. Brennan waited. He was a good man. Her voice broke on the words. A good man, but he couldn't stop. The gambling, the cards, the owing. I worked, laundry till my hands bled, sold my mama's jewelry, her wedding ring, everything. Wasn't enough. She looked up, met Brennan's eyes. When he died, I thought maybe I could breathe, but the debts came due and I was drowning worse. She wiped her face with her sleeve. Her cheeks were wet. She hadn't realized she was crying. I'm scared I'll drown here too, even if it's different, even if you're... Her voice broke again. I'm scared. You won't... Brennan leaned forward, his hands on the table, closer to hers but not touching. Can't promise much. Can't promise easy or comfortable. Can't promise I'll know the right thing to say. But I promise that you won't drown. Not here. Not while I'm... He stopped. Not while I got breath. The first snowflake hit the window. Silent. Then another. Brennan reached up, took off his hat, set it on the table. Ellen saw his face fully for the first time. The scar at his hairline white rope burn. Old, running from his temple back into his hair. His eyes were wet. Not crying, but wet. I got nothing, he said. His hands shook. He pressed them flat on the table. Nothing but work and this land. It ain't enough for most people. I know that, but if you stayed... His voice dropped. Barely audible. If you and Samuel stayed, we'd be building something. Together. Not you working for me, not me keeping you. Just together. Partners. Ellen's vision blurred. She blinked. Tears hot on her cold cheeks. They froze before they fell. Left tracks on her face. I don't love you, she said. Brennan flinched, but he didn't look away. I know. I loved Thomas. Still do. I think... Or I love what he could have been if the cards hadn't... She stopped. I can't promise I'll ever... I'm not asking for that. Then what are you asking? Brennan's jaw worked. The silence stretched. Snow falling harder now outside. The window rattled. Ellen watched his face, watched him struggle for words. Asking if maybe someday, he said finally, we could be family. Real family. Not this... He gestured at the cabin. At the space between them. Not you here because you got nowhere else, but because this is where you want to be. Because Samuel's got two people who... His voice broke. Because we choose it. All of us. Ellen's hands found the table edge again. Gripped hard. What if I leave anyway? What if spring comes, and I still take that job in Denver? Then you go. Just like that. Just like that. Brennan's hand moved across the table, stopped inches from hers. But I'm asking you to think about staying. Not for me, for you, for Samuel, for... He stopped. For us. If there could be an us. Ellen looked at his hand. Scarred knuckles. Rope burns on the palm. Calloused. Shaking slightly. Like hers. She put her hand on the table. Not touching his. Just there. Close. I need time, she said. Okay. I need to think. Okay. His hand moved, covered hers, brief, warm, rough, then pulled back. He stood, picked up his hat, looked at her sitting there, tears frozen on her face, hands shaking on the table. His hand touched her shoulder. Light. So light she barely felt it. Then gone. He walked to the door, opened it. Snow blew in, cold and sharp. He stepped out. Ellen sat at the table. Her shoulder burned where he'd touched it. She put her hand there. pressed. Through the window she watched him cross to the barn. The snow was falling thick now, covering his footprints almost as fast as he made them. The barn door opened, closed. No lantern. Ellen stood, walked to the door. The bar was there. Oak plank, iron brackets. She looked at it. Her hand reached out, stopped. She turned away, left it unbarred, went to the table, lit the lamp she'd already blown out, turned up the wick. The flame steadied, bright. She carried it to the window, set it there, where he could see it from the barn. Then she went to the back room. Samuel was still asleep. She lay down beside the bureau, pulled the thin blanket over herself, closed her eyes, didn't sleep. The wind howled. The cabin creaked. The snow kept falling. At some point she heard the barn door open. Footsteps, coming toward the cabin. They stopped at the porch steps. Ellen held her breath. The footsteps climbed. 1 step, 2, 3, stopped at the door. She could hear breathing. His breathing. On the other side of the door. Then the sound of him sitting down. Back against the door, maybe. Just sitting there. Ellen got up. Quiet. Walked to the front room. Stood on her side of the door. Put her hand against the wood. On the other side, you still awake? Her throat closed. Yeah. Silence. I meant it, Brennan said, about building something. Together. Ellen pressed her forehead to the door. I know. I ain't asking for love. I know. Just asking for a chance. Ellen's hand found the door latch. She lifted it. The door opened. Brennan was sitting on the porch, back against the rail, snow on his shoulders. He looked up. His face, come inside, Ellen said. Before you freeze. He stood. Snow fell off his coat. He stepped in. She closed the door behind him. They stood in the lamplight. The fire in the stove had burned down to coals. The cabin was cold, but they were both inside it now. I'll stay through winter, Ellen said. The words came out steady, final. We'll see come spring. Brennan nodded. Fair? From the back room, a sound. Samuel. Not crying, just da. Ellen's breath stopped. Brennan's face went still. He said, Brennan's voice broke. Yeah. That was his first word. Yeah. Brennan looked at Ellen, his eyes asking. She nodded. Slow. He walked to the back room. Ellen followed. Samuel was sitting up in the drawer, both hands on the rim, looking at them. When he saw Brennan, he reached out. Both arms. Da. Brennan picked him up. His hands shook. Samuel's whole fist wrapped around Brennan's collar, the baby's head tucked under his chin. Yeah, Brennan whispered. Voice rough, breaking. That's right, little man. Ellen stood in the doorway watching them. Her son, this man who'd paid for her freedom. Both of them together. Her chest hurt. She pressed her palm there. Brennan looked at her over Samuel's head. Snow still melting in his hair. His face wet. Not from snow. Thank you, he said. For what? Ellen didn't ask. She already knew. Morning came gray and cold. Ellen woke to Samuel's fussing. the sound pulling her from sleep that had finally come just before dawn. She changed his diaper cloth, the fabric damp and heavy. His legs kicked while she worked, stronger now at 6 months, 2 teeth visible when he opened his mouth. She carried him to the front room. The stove was going, coffee already made, but Brennan wasn't gone. He stood at the threshold, hand on the door frame, snow on his shoulders from checking the animals, looking at her like he was asking permission to enter his own cabin. Ellen's throat tightened. "Coffee's hot." He came in, closed the door, soft behind him, brushed the snow off, the white flakes melting on the floor. She poured 2 cups, handed him one. Their fingers didn't touch, but came close. "I'll stay through winter," Ellen said. The words came out steady. She'd practiced them in the dark. "We'll see come spring." Brennan's jaw worked. He nodded once, set down his cup, looked at Samuel in her arms. Samuel reached out, both arms extended toward Brennan, made that sound again. "Da." Brennan's hands shook when he took the baby. Samuel went easy, both fists grabbing Brennan's collar. Brennan's voice came out rough, broke on the words. "Yeah, that's right." He held Samuel against his chest, the baby's head tucked under his chin, his hand on Samuel's back, covering most of it. Ellen watched them. Her son. This man who'd bought her freedom and was giving her a choice, both of them together like they'd always been this way. Her hands found the coffee cup, held it tight. The heat burned her palms. She didn't let go. December came with more snow. The cabin walls closed in during the worst of it. 3 days of blizzard that kept them all inside. Ellen cut the blue calico into panels by lamplight, measured the window. Her stitches were small and straight, the way her mother had taught her. The fabric transformed under her hands. When she hung the curtains, the cabin changed. Light came through blue instead of bare glass. The room felt smaller but warmer, less empty. Brennan worked in the barn during the clear days. Ellen heard hammering, the rasp of a plane on wood. She didn't ask what he was making, just listened to the rhythm of it while she kneaded bread dough or stirred beans. On Christmas Eve, Tomas rode up through the snow with a jar of peppermint sticks. He gave one to Samuel, who gummed it until his mouth was sticky and red. Ellen made a small cake from precious sugar and dried apples. It was lopsided, the top burnt. Brennan ate 2 pieces. Brennan gave Ellen boots. Store-bought, practical, the leather new and stiff. She gave him a shirt she'd sewn from fabric Tomas had brought. The buttonholes were still crooked, but better than her first try. Brennan put it on over his undershirt, wore it the rest of the day. For Samuel, there was a wooden horse. Brennan had carved it from pine. The mane painted black with soot mixed in bacon fat. Samuel held it in both hands, put it in his mouth, dropped it. Ellen picked it up. Samuel reached for it again, laughed when she gave it back. That night, Brennan stayed after supper. He pulled something from his coat pocket. A harmonica, Honer. The metal tarnished. He turned it over in his hands. "Ain't played in years," he said. He put it to his lips. The first notes came out rusty, uncertain. He tried again. A melody emerged, halting, but there. Ellen recognized it. Amazing Grace. Her mother used to hum it while cooking. Ellen hummed along. Quiet at first, then louder. Brennan's playing got steadier. The sound filled the cabin. Samuel fell asleep on the floor, mid-crawl, face down on the blanket. one hand still clutching the wooden horse. January froze hard. Ellen cracked ice on the water bucket every morning, using the back of the ladle to keep her scarred knuckles out of the cold. Her hands had healed over the months, white lines marking where the splits had been. Like his. She taught Brennan to read every evening after supper. He was slow but determined, tracing each word with his finger, lips moving. When he finished a page, he'd look at her. She'd nod. He'd turn the page. By February, he could read simple sentences without help. February brought Samuel's first tooth breaking through the top gum. He cried for 2 days straight, inconsolable. Brennan walked him at night between feedings while Ellen dozed in the chair, waking when Samuel's hunger won over his pain. She'd nurse him, hand him back to Brennan, try to sleep again. They moved around each other in the dark cabin, passing the baby back and forth, neither complaining about the lack of sleep. Tomas taught Ellen Spanish during his afternoon visits. She learned gracias, sí, familia, buenos dias. He'd point at things, name them. She'd repeat. Her accent was terrible. He laughed but kept teaching. By the end of February, she could hold simple conversations. The days got longer. The snow started melting at the edges. One morning, Ellen woke to the sound of water dripping from the eaves, spring breaking through. March thaw came slow. The prairie turned from white to brown to the first hints of green. Ellen stood at the window watching the land change. She hadn't mentioned Denver since November. The address had faded from her memory. Mrs. Adelaide Farnsworth felt like someone from another life, someone else's life. Brennan hitched the plow to the strongest horse, turned over the garden plot. The dirt was black, rich. Ellen found seed packets Tomas had brought. Beans, squash, marigolds, her mother's favorite. She knelt in the dirt, made small holes with her finger, dropped in seeds, covered them. The first green shoots wouldn't show for weeks, but she planted anyway. Seeds held in trust, moved down the row. Samuel toddled between the furrows. 9 months old now, walking for 2 weeks, unsteady but determined. He fell face first into the soft dirt. Ellen lunged for him. So did Brennan. They both reached him at the same time, hands colliding. Samuel sat up, dirt on his face, and laughed. Ellen laughed too. Couldn't help it. Brennan's mouth twitched. Then he laughed. Real laughter, deep from his chest. The sound of it made Ellen's ribs ache in a good way. From the barn, Tomas called out, La Familia. Ellen didn't correct him. That evening she found Brennan at the corral. The sun was dropping, the sky going gold. The mountains in the distance were purple dark. She walked up beside him, closer than she used to stand, close enough their shoulders almost touched. I'm staying, she said. Brennan turned, looked at her full on. What? I'm staying. Not because I got no place else. Not because of winter or spring or what month it is. She took a breath. But attends, because this is home. Brennan's hands gripped the fence rail. White-knuckled. You sure? Yeah? He let go of the rail, turned to face her completely. His hand came up slow, giving her time to move away. She didn't. His palm cupped her cheek. Rough and warm, his thumb brushed under her eye. He leaned in, pressed his lips to her forehead. Chaste, brief, a promise of more, someday when she was ready. Thank you, he whispered against her skin. Ellen's hands found his shirt, the one she'd sewn, her stitches under her palms. She held on. Samuel toddled over. dirt still on his face from earlier. He grabbed both their legs. "Mama?" "Da." Brennan stepped back, looked down at Samuel, then at Ellen, his face open in a way she'd never seen. "Come on." He picked up Samuel, held out his other hand to Ellen. She took it, calloused palm against calloused palm. They walked to the cabin together. The sun touched the horizon. Light spilled gold across the prairie, across the cabin, across them standing in the doorway. 3 silhouettes against the brightness. Brennan's arm came around Ellen's shoulders. First time, heavy, real. She leaned into it just slightly. His hand squeezed. Samuel pointed at the sky. "Bird." Ellen looked up. A hawk circling high, dark against the gold. Brennan looked too. They stood there together watching it ride the thermals. Wings spread, free. The light faded. Purple crept in at the edges. The first stars appeared. Samuel's head dropped to Brennan's shoulder. Asleep the way babies do. Sudden, complete. "Should get him to bed," Ellen said, but she didn't move. "Yeah." Brennan didn't move either. The wind picked up, carried the smell of turned earth and new grass and distance. The land stretched out before them, dark now except where the last light caught the prairie grass. It looked like an ocean, like they were standing on the shore of something vast. "We'll plant more tomorrow," Brennan said. "Get the whole garden in before the next rain." "Okay." "Tomas wants to hire on 2 more hands. Ranch is growing." "That's good." "Yeah." Silence, comfortable, easy, the kind that didn't need filling. Ellen looked at their hands, hers still holding the wooden horse Samuel had dropped, Brennan's supporting their son, both of them with dirt under their nails, calluses thick from work, building hands. They went inside. Brennan laid Samuel in the cradle he'd built oak with curved rockers, smooth from sanding. The baby didn't wake, just curled on his side, the wooden horse tucked against his chest. Ellen lit the lamp. Brennan banked the stove. They moved around each other in the small space, their movements learned from months of practice. She heated water for washing. He stacked wood for morning. She set out tomorrow's beans to soak. He checked the door latch. When the work was done, they stood in the front room, the lamp between them, the curtains she'd sewn hanging blue in the window, the cradle rocking slightly from Brennan's last touch. "Night," Brennan said. He picked up his hat. Ellen's hand caught his sleeve. "Stay." He froze. "What? Not?" Her face went hot. "Not like that. Just stay. In here. We can put blankets on the floor. You don't have to sleep in the barn no more." Brennan looked at her hand on his sleeve, at her face, at the lamp burning steady between them. "You sure?" "Yeah." He set down his hat. Ellen got blankets from the chest, made a pallet on the floor by the stove. Brennan took off his boots, lay down, pulled one blanket over himself. Ellen blew out the lamp, went to the back room, left the door open between them. She could hear his breathing. He could hear hers. "Ellen." "Yeah. Thank you. For staying. For giving us a chance. Pause. For making this a home." Ellen closed her eyes. Her hand found the space under her pillow. Empty. The teething ring had never been hers. Had never been here. Just in Brennan's saddlebag where it belonged. A memory of a child he'd loved. A reminder of loss that had brought him to that auction block. To her, "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me. On that platform. For," her voice caught, "for everything." Silence. Then sleep well. You too. She lay there listening to the cabin settle, the stove ticking as it cooled. Samuel's small snores from the cradle. Brennan's breathing evening out into sleep. April came with warmth that lingered. Ellen planted the last of the seeds marigolds near the door, the way her mother used to. Brennan helped, his hands in the dirt beside hers. Samuel toddled between them, falling, getting up, trying again. One evening at sunset, they stood in the cabin doorway, all three of them. Samuel between Ellen and Brennan, holding both their hands, Brennan's arm around Ellen's shoulders. The first time, not heavy, just there, real. They looked at the land they'd worked together. The garden plot with its hidden seeds, the prairie stretching endless, the mountains going dark against the last light. Samuel pointed. Bird. A sparrow, small and quick, darting past. They looked together. The sky deepened. Stars emerging. The wind carried the smell of earth and growing things, and home. Ellen's hand tightened on Samuel's. Her other hand found Brennan's at her shoulder. Held on. This was enough. This was everything. There's something quiet that happens when a story like this settles. Not answers exactly. Just the weight of recognizing what it costs to start over. To stand somewhere unfamiliar and decide whether to stay or keep running. That heaviness sits in the chest, doesn't it? Familiar, even if the details aren't ours. Many of us know what it is to be unseen, to carry something grief, shame, fear so quietly that we forget we're carrying it at all. Some of us have stood at our own thresholds, literal or otherwise, deciding whether to bar the door or leave it open. Whether to trust that this time, maybe. Safety doesn't require walls. Ellen and Brennan's story doesn't need to teach us anything. It's allowed to just be what it was, two people building something careful and slow. Not because they had all the answers, but because they didn't. That's enough. The unresolved parts, the still tender places, the spring that came without guarantees, those can rest exactly as they are. Thank you for staying with this, for listening all the way to the end, even when the road was long and the outcome uncertain.